And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 289. Today I'm talking about Crowd, which is a photographic event I'm going to be putting on for Spring Fling weekend, which is the last full bank holiday weekend in May. So I'm going to tell you all about that, the complications of trying to put it together, how I've got on so far, what you can expect, all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, here we are live on YouTube. If you happen to be watching live, leave a comment, let me know you're here, and we can make a start. So yes, welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 289. Today, Crowd. Now, it was going to be a feedback session, but nobody sent me any images for feedback. What can you do? Well, what I did was I suddenly realised that actually coming up in just 3 weeks' time is Spring Fling, which is this major art event across the whole of southwest Scotland with 110 different artists and makers taking part, including me. And I'm putting on a particular event that if you happen to be nearby, you should come along and visit. And even if you're not, I thought there's still, because this is a photography podcast, there's all sorts of photography stuff and decision making and thoughts that go into it that I thought you might be interested in. So this is what it's going to be about. Meanwhile, we have, we are here live on YouTube. Well, as if you happen to be watching live, if you are watching live, leave a comment. Let me know you're here. Let me know what you're up to, what the weather's doing, usual kind of bits and pieces. If you're not watching live, you can still leave comments throughout the time here. It's just I won't be able to respond to them in real time as such. But eventually, sooner or later, when I come onto YouTube, it does give me a little notification to say that somebody's commented, so I should be able to reply. If you are watching live as well, or actually even on the recording, if you could hit the like button, that always helps with the algorithms, really. Assuming you like it. But yes, likes always help. We have found on occasion, if enough people who are actually watching live hit like, then occasionally YouTube pops it up in somebody else's feed. And we've picked up the odd person here and there who's sort of seen us going out live and has decided to come and just join us for the hour or so. So yeah, here we are. I can see we've got a couple of people in already, so let's see how it's going. So Lisa joins us from a windy, sunny, chilly day in southern Maryland. Gunilla is joining us from Orland and says, today I'm babysitting a 5-year-old. Is that a 5-year-old child or a 5-year-old something else? I'm imagining it's a child, yes. I was going to go off on something and then caught myself. There we go. Greetings from a sunny Long Island, New York, says April. Susan says, hi from a cold, cloudy Kakubri. I thought summer had come last week, but I was mistaken. Loving those facial expressions, Kim. Yep. Well, yeah, that's all on the cover card that you might have noticed. And I'll be talking all about that as we go through. So yeah, Lisa's chatting to Gunilla. John says, hello from a cold mid-Ohio. Lisa says, summer's definitely gone AWOL. Stacey's joined us and said, good morning, cool today and sunny. Got all the dogs out. Yeah, well, here in Castle Douglas, a bit like Susan and Kakubri, it's March weather. It's not May weather. Going into May, I'm now expecting there to be much more warmth and sunshine. But to be honest, here it is. It's cold, it's dull, it's overcast. There's a damp bite in the wind. VG's just joined us from a hot and humid Chennai, and I'm sure most of us will probably kind of want to siphon a little bit of that heat from India just into our local ecosystem here at the moment. Not the whole lot, mind, given that Vichy's at this time of year is quite often putting up with temperatures of over 40 degrees Celsius. Right, okay, so we have people in. I have a podcast topic. So let's actually, I'll tell you one little thing that I will just point out. You may notice in the various bits and pieces I've added another one, which is Substack, right? And now, not to get too excited, I'm not starting to do major writings all the time, but one of the things I have decided is I'm doing a newsletter. Well, I sort of had an on-off newsletter list for years. I have a list and then people have joined it and then I haven't done anything with it. And basically the problem is if you're using something like MailChimp or one of these online newsletter things, is they lure you in with the idea of, hey, if you've got up to 10,000 subscribers, you're free. And then, but you only pay lots of money if you're above that. And you go, oh, well, I don't have anything like that, And then suddenly they sort of drop it. And then it's if you've only got 1,000 subscribers. And then if you've got over 100 subscribers. And suddenly you find that you are locked into having to pay large amounts of money for something which I use very, very occasionally and isn't really worth it. So I was looking around for options and I realised Substack. I've got quite a few friends now who sort of use Substack for sending out newsletters, but so what I'm doing now is I've set up a Substack. It's completely free. It's not I'm not going to be shoving anything behind a paywall. But what I will do is probably once a month, I'll put in something which is a kind of podcast highlights, telling you what's coming up in the month, what has been there with links if you've missed it. But I'll also put in any extra information if I'm doing workshops or if I've been involved in something interesting which I might have written about. The kind of things that would be blog posts, I suppose, might go in there occasionally as well. It's not the kind of thing you will get bombarded with every week, every day, but anyway, so here you go. It's what have we got? Yeah, kimairesphotography.substack.com. So if you're interested, go to kimairesphotography.substack.com and you can sign up for there. And it's completely free. And at any time as well, if you get fed up, feel like you're being overwhelmed with all bits and pieces, then you can unsubscribe easily as well. And I won't take offence. Who else have we got in? There's a couple more comments here. Marilyn's joined us from a cool and wet Colorado. Stacey's busy. Got a planned wedding. Our wedding, she says, for the end of that. Congratulations, Stacey. That's lovely. Lots of people here saying nice and congratulations and all the rest as well. Nadia joins us from a dull grey day here in Fife. Janet says hi from a rainy Netherlands. Open air museum near Arnhem, I think. No headset with me, so I'll be watching the recording later. And VG says, looking forward to reading your newsletter. I've admired your writing as well. Yeah, well, that's true. Back when I used to have a regular blog, VG that's where we met, basically, essentially online, was VG used to follow my blog. Not really been doing so much writing of late, but... and Ginnella's saying that she is very busy with the 5-year-old she's looking after. Right, okay. And another quick shout out, I suppose, just before we get on to things, which was happy birthday to VG for yesterday, cropped up in my Facebook page. So yes, VG's birthday yesterday, so happy birthday for that. I hope the day went well. I hope you had fun with it. Right, okay. So, what are we going to do? I've told you about Substack. Ask you to click the like. If you can click the like button. That's, like I say, that's always useful as well. So, right. Okay, so what we're going to talk about then is Crowd. Now, Crowd is a photography event. Now, it's a little bit, bear with me a little bit while I try and just work out exactly all the different strands to come in to make sense of it. In essence, what we're starting with is... Where are we starting? Well, okay, I'll tell you what, let's just start with the idea of the fact that, well, anybody who knows my photography, been following my photography for any length of time, over and above what I do on the podcast, knows that I love a good tableau. I love a good scene. I love a good photo where you can have more than one person in it and kind of create something out of it. Now, there's always a complication with that. Anybody who's tried, we're doing headshots last month. Some of you may remember just the difficulties of trying to get one face. When you have two people in, you get a different dynamic. There's something else. Well, as soon as you have two people in it, you can't help but build a relationship between the two. If the two are looking at each other, or if the two are looking in different directions, you kind of start to superimpose a relationship, which I always find interesting. If you have three people into it, now the dynamic changes again. And with each extra person you add into the photo, you end up with a new kind of dynamic, which can become exponentially growing. Certainly exponentially growing in complication, if you're trying to stage it at all. Now, I'll tell you what, let me just rearrange the space here for a moment, because what I'll do is just as a kind of... Now, the biggest photo, I would say, with the most people that I've ever photographed before in my life, probably was, where are we? this one, which was at my friends Ruth and Gav, who got married, and this big event and all the rest of it. And although I wasn't there as an official photographer, I was there just as an invitee because I'm a pal. I did take my camera along, and then suddenly somebody said, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice to actually have a quick photo of everybody about?" And I was about the only person who. So we quickly called everybody together, and you end up with this great big scene of lots of people and various people who can't see the camera or hidden in the crowd, all the rest of it. So nice fun shoot, but it's not exactly what you would call a staged narrative shoot. The kind of thing that I'm really talking about with this is more this kind of photo. And many of you will have seen this one before. I think I've even done a podcast where I've talked about this one more in depth. So this one was of a group of artists, and we sort of staged it to look like a sort of 17th century Dutch old masters painting. So it's got the kind of composition, the lighting that was very common in those kind of old master style paintings. And by using the tropes and the lighting and the composition styles, it echoes, it automatically takes us to that place. And I really enjoy that. And in this case, what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people in this shot. Now, the largest staged shot that I've done, I think, rather than just a group of people who happen to already be there, was blood bikes. And this one, again, I think I've talked about in years gone past, where we had a whole mass of bikers, and I was on a cherry picker and, raised up. But at this point, although there are something in the region of 25, 30 people in the photo, it's not like other than having all the bikes in a row, I didn't have to worry necessarily about coordinating people together. But I've always kind of had this thought, wouldn't it be fun to create a shoot where you had 40 or 50 odd people and somehow you've kind of staged it. So it's not just a staff photo or a school photo kind of thing, but there's some kind of interaction or flow or something going on with it. So this idea then, it's long kind of played in my mind, the idea of could I create a staged photo with literally dozens of people in it. The problem is, of course, is these kind of opportunities don't really tend to crop up very often. And if you're trying to grab and pull people together, you've got to give them a good reason to come together. And so it's just always kind of sat on the back burner. But then the next thing that comes into this is Spring Fling. Now, Spring Fling is an art event that happens right across the southwest Scotland. Dumfries and Galloway, within Dumfries and Galloway in southwest Scotland each year, usually the last weekend in May, the bank holiday weekend in May, which this year is the 23rd, 24th and 25th of May. Now, this year in Spring Fling, there are 110 studios open to the public. And these studios, there's me, there's a couple of other photographers, but there are artists, there are makers of all kinds, jewelers, potters, willow weavers. It's it's extensive, and it's become one of the largest, one of the large kind of events in Scotland itself. And during the course of a weekend, you can't possibly fit 110 people in. So you kind of, if you've got through 25 or 30, you really feel like you've done the rounds. But I've been doing this Spring Fling on and off for large part of the last kind of, 14, 15 years or so. Maggie, my wife, also, she's been in Spring Fling for most of them for, about the last 18 years or so. So Spring Fling is this kind of big open studio art event. Now, what I decided to do this year is, in years past, what I've done is I've had a studio space, not usually my own, because my own is just an office, really. But I've borrowed a friend's space or something, and people will come in. I've got pictures up on the walls, and maybe I do a little photo demonstration. I show people a little bit of lighting, or how to look good in a photo, a little bit like we did with the headshots last month. But this year, what I decided to do was I'm going to put on an event. I thought the thing is with Spring Fling, people come through in ones or twos at a time. Now, I won't get 40 or 50 people in one go. I will get people in dribs and drabs. I'll get them 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, if it's really busy, at a time. But generally speaking, but across the course of the weekend, I could have a couple of hundred people. There could be 100, 200, possibly 300, maybe even 400 people. It's difficult to really guess completely because it can vary a lot. But I could end up with a couple of hundred people coming through across the weekend. So what if I was to try and create a scene where actually I create a crowded scene, but I photograph the people individually? If I had a space that I could place people in as they turned up in different positions, then potentially I could overlay them in Photoshop afterwards. So if you like, your proof of concept with this was, anybody here remember my ultimate selfie? So this photo I did kind of just after sort of around a kind of lockdown time, where I did the ultimate selfie. I did the photo. So this is 10 versions of me in this photo. And again, I think I've talked about this photo, gone into more detail in it in podcasts past. But briefly, what happened was I set the camera on a tripod, set it to a 10-second timer, went click, ran round, stood in front with a leather coat and glasses, trying to look all cool and what have you. Then I took the coat off, grabbed the camera, set a different camera, set the 10-second timer, knelt down as though I was photographing myself, went back, did another one, went back, shoved the hat on backwards, had my car, did one where I'm opening the car door, another one where I'm sitting in the car, another one where I'm sprawled across the car bonnet, doing a selfie at the back, holding the light, wearing my glasses. And the 10th person, if anybody's looking for it, is, if you go back to the selfie here, there is, in fact, you see in more detail on the original. This is a smaller version. There's a version of me sitting in the phone as well. So this became like a kind of proof of concept that I've understood before, whereby if you have the camera in a fixed position and you can kind of get the lighting more or less consistent, then if you photograph everybody in a different position, you can merge them together in Photoshop. I'm not going to say easily, but at least it's kind of doable without necessarily having to worry about cutting out people's strands of hair, which if anybody's ever tried, you'll know exactly what I mean. So now I come up with this to this point of, what if I could create a photo, a crowd scene at Spring Fling, where people come in, 1 or 2 at a time, and I can set it up such that you could have 40, maybe 50 people in a single scene. But they are photographed individually with the camera in the same place across the weekend. Then I could have this large scene where at the end of it, when it's put together, then you're going to have this crowd, even though everybody was only had their photo taken individually. Now at this point, to add to that, what we could also do is try and get everybody to act as though they are interacting with everybody else. So although everybody might be standing individually, if they pull a face this way or they wave to somebody on the other side of the room, when you put all the images together, you will have this incredibly interactive scene where it's going to look like everybody's interacting with everybody else, even though everybody was only there individually with the photo. And it's not going to be until the end are you actually going to know, when you get to see the photo, who it was you were standing next to, who you might have been waving to, who you might have been pulling a face to, or who might have been standing behind you doing the bunny ears, right? It might turn out that you're standing next to your best friend who was turned up 3 hours later. Might turn out that you're standing next to your mortal enemy. Might turn out that you're standing next to somebody you haven't seen for years, an old school friend. You're not going to know, because everybody's turning up at different times. And you're also not going to know how you were interacting with any of the other people in until the final image. So this was the idea, and it just felt like a lot of fun. So I thought, okay, I've got to try this. And so I pitched it to Spring Fling, because you don't automatically get into Spring Fling just because you want to say you are. You have to put in an application. And this isn't a standard studio event. However, fortunately, they loved the idea and said, yes, okay, that's great, go for it. Then what happens is every year you then have the brochure. So this is the Spring Fling brochure, and in it you can see you have the different studios, a little bit of blurb underneath, telling you all what they do, routes they're on. It's a lovely, lovely thing to get hold of, is the Spring Fling brochure. Now, the thing is you need a photo for the brochure. And the problem is that the photo that I needed for the brochure basically was the one that I'm going to take at Spring Fling. But I hadn't figured out a way of being able to take it and then send it back in time 6 months. Surprise, surprise. So what I had to do then was I had to work out how to create at least a photo that kind of gave a sense of maybe what was going on, even if it wasn't going to be exact. I'm noticing some things in the chat, so I'll just take a quick check. Oh, Alan's joined us from Bridlington. Gunilla says she photographed a motorcycle club meeting at the town square on May 1st, just for her own pleasure. Was not easy. Oh, that sounds like fun though. No, Meg's joined us. Everybody saying hello to Meg. Gunilla said she hadn't realised that they're all me in that photo. Yes. Marilyn says great photo and concept, and various kind of interactions here. Sandra says hello everyone from a warm and sunny Birmingham, running a bit late the allotment this morning. Right, okay, so what I'll do now is I'll talk you through how I created that cover photo. So what we're talking about is this photo. So this is what I decided to create for Spring Fling, for the brochure, for the publicity. And basically, although the kind of photo that I'm going to be doing isn't going to be as packed as this, it's going to be much more spread out because I'm doing it in a room. The idea was to just give that sense of multiple people taken at different times. Now, I didn't have access to loads of people, so it was just me. So what I did, I'll tell you what I will do. I will show you, essentially what I did was I set up a little quick backdrop, a couple of lights either side of me, and just took a photo, right? So we've got a photo, this is me. And then what I'm able to do is, because it's a very plain background, it's very easily, I can just use Photoshop select subject and it cuts me out very, very easily. And then I was able to cut me out and put me onto a plain black layer. Then, okay, there I go. I just shifted my head a bit. And then I thought, well, okay, let's see what else I can do. So I pull a face looking to my right, and then to the other side, we pull a kind of, wrinkle your nose. Then doing things like the bunny ears. So I'm starting to think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all these people into these versions of me into a large scene. Pull a face, head in the hands, hand on the chin, surprise, despair, disgust, stick your tongue out, laugh, pull silly faces, raise one eyebrow, raise the other eyebrow, pull a face at the person next to me, pull back from the person next to me, stick a tongue out at the person on the other side of me, scratch my head, pick my nose, pull my beard, stick fingers in the ears, all this kind of stuff. So basically what happens is I took about 50 odd photos of myself, pulling different faces, even grabbed my bazooki there, doing selfies. And with this one, actually, where you can't quite see it in this, I lightened it up for the final one, but there's a picture of me in the phone in front of my face. So then I took all those photos together and merged them into the one image. And what happened, which is kind of what I expected to happen, but really I was so pleased with the way that it happened, was that it didn't seem to matter where I dropped the images, little stories started to form. So this version of me here, who actually was doing the bunny ears, has now got the ears over this one, who's looking quite serious. This one here, who's pulling a face like, what on earth is going on, seems to be staring directly at the person, the version of me that's sticking my tongue out with my fingers in my ears. This one over here, looks like, what are you doing with your head on my shoulder? This one's looking rather aggressive. This one's a bit worried about the one who's looking rather aggressive. These two are having a right old laugh together. And this is what I started to find really fun and interesting, was that as a concept, each, however you put people together, if you have two people together, if one of them has turned and is pulling a face at the person next to them, if the other person is looking this way, it's a story. If the other person is ignoring them, it's a story. If the other person's doing a selfie or checking their phone while they're pulling a face to them, it's a story. That basically, no matter what combination you have, as soon as you put two people together and one of them is looking at the other or seeming to interact with them, or even actually if you have the two people and they are both looking away from each other, it's a story. We create the connections and build the bridge, fill the gap in the sense of how are they reacting with each other. And so this idea here, you can see there's 40 odd of me here in the one space, and there's all these multiple stories going on. Now, the thing is with this one, most of them or a lot of them are then looking at the camera. What I realised with this is most of the fun is in the ones where they're not actually looking at the camera, but they're actually interacting with each other. And so that then in turn leads into this idea that if I can create this big scene where I'm photographing one person at a time, but each of them can look as though they are interacting with somebody else, then when we put together the final image with 40 to 50 people, if I can get that many, then it should be quite astonishing that everybody is going to be interacting with everybody else on some kind of level. Or there might be the odd person who will be looking at their phone or lost in their own world, or, but that will be okay. You can have those people dotted through the photo too. That then is the concept. So across the Spring Fling weekend on the 23rd, 24th and 25th of May, Studio 83 on the Orange route, if you happen to be anywhere near Spring Fling week at Dumfries and Galloway, come and see me. I'll be in Dumfries at Kindar House up on the Crichton Estate. Now I'll tell you a little bit about that space in a minute, but I kind of wanted to get across. So that's the concept, is we create a space, people come in their ones or twos, I stick them in a different place, I photograph them in all those different places, I encourage them to look as though they're interacting with other people, even though they're on their own, and then I will merge them all together afterwards into one giant photo, which has everybody in it. And then we will see the stories, and we're not going to know what the stories are or who they're next to, or who, if you happen to be in it, who you happen to be standing next to, which might be somebody you know or somebody you don't know. There might be somebody you know elsewhere in the picture, and we won't know that until the end. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. So yeah, do please try and come along to that if you can. What else? Sandra says, extra advanced photoshopping for that cover photo. Well, yeah, April says, what? Seriously, Sandra, you're right. Too much photoshopping for me, way beyond my capabilities. But John says, I feel this is easier than it seems. VG says, nightmare for me. Stacey says, lots of work. And Marilyn says, how is this done? Okay, well, as I just kind of said, but okay, is what I've done is I've taken all these individual photos of me. I've cut them out using subject select. But because I've got a black background, it's very easy to cut them out. And then I've put them all onto what, essentially I've got 40 layers onto a black background in Photoshop, and then I've just moved them about. Okay. So that's really how it's worked. I've tried to make it as simple as possible to be able to then construct that. So I've set the lights up, I've taken the photos of me, I've cut them all out, I've moved them about the space. And in this case, in order so that you can see everybody, I've kind of made it look like we're in rows going up the back. Oh, Roland's joined us. Hi, Roland. Glad you can make it. So that's kind kind of where we'd, so that's where I'd got to. So I then submitted this image, and now if we go to Studio 83 on the orange route, you can see that's now in the brochure with a bit of blurb, with the bits of blurb and what have you going with it. So that was all very well. I've now submitted that. They're happy with that. But at this point, I still hadn't found a place to do it. But tell you what, let's just kind of take a breather for a moment, and we'll do an update on the Smug Points as well. So Smug Points situation currently, yes, because last month then it was everything to play for. We built right up to last week, where we had the signs challenge set by Anton, and ultimately our winner for April accumulated the most Smug Points was VG. A VG with 105 Smug Points. Running second was Gunilla with 80 Smug Points. Roland, in fact, was third place with 45 Smug Points, and Anton was fourth with 40. So that meant that VG won the most accumulated Smug Points for April. And Smug Points, if anybody's just come in, not sure quite what we're talking about, are you accumulate Smug Points for the amount you interact with this podcast. So if you are watching live right now, you leave a comment, you get 5 Smug Points just for turning up and just for leaving a comment. And you'll have noticed, was it Sandra just nipped in to say, I'm here, I won't be here for long, I'll catch up later. But by doing that, she gets her 5 Smug Points. We've seen Robert do that kind of thing periodically as well. In fact, actually, Robert's just joined us and says, howdy all from a sunny and beautiful day in North Texas. What was that? Well, VG said, the expressions, do you by any chance have you been an actor? No, only insofar as, just getting on with the world, or actually having children and pulling silly faces. Meg, blame Meg. All right, okay, where was it? Yes, Smug Points. So, yes, and when we have a challenge, you get 10 Smug Points for sticking something in the challenge. You get 25 Smug Points for sticking in something for feedback or critique, and also within the challenges, there are bonus Smug Points to be had. So VG won the most Smug Points for April. So she gets to choose the topic for May. And I'll tell you about that at the end of the podcast. So stick around, or if you have to rush off, come back and check it later. And I'll be talking about what we're going to be looking at for that. Right. Stacey saying congrats to VG and Robert. I don't think, and somebody else is saying congratulations to Robert. Not sure why anybody's saying congratulations to Robert. I mean, he's, yay, Robert's lovely. And it's a sunny and beautiful day in Texas. I don't think that's actually down to him. But anyway, it was VG who, who won the Smug Points, and it was Gunilla who came second. Right. Where are we going to now? Yeah, I got slightly thrown by that one. Unless Robert's written something else in, which I don't know about. Can't see anything in the comments. We're live. It's chaotic. Is it ever any different? Right. Okay. So what else are we going to... Oh, well, no, not that one. Just while we're here then, if you're finding these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can support these podcasts. Another way, bring your friends along. And of course, like I say, don't forget that I've now got Substack as well. And I will try and remember that. So I've got setting up a newsletter. If you'd like to belong to the newsletter, it's free. It's not hidden behind a paywall, but it's also not going to be bombarding you, every day or anything like that. Probably, once a month. Occasionally it might be 2 or 3 a month, but I can't imagine it being much more than that. But anyway, kimairsphotography.substack.com. Go there, sign up. What have we got? Susan says, congratulations on just being a nice guy, Robert. Robert says, everybody's congratulating you on having a beautiful day. Yes, well, that's rather nice given how dull and cold and March weather it is here. Right, okay. Where am I? I went out of focus for a moment. It's the autofocus on this. Doesn't quite know where to... I've got to set this to a fixed focus. There is a way of doing it, and I keep forgetting to redo it. Okay, so what are we talking about next? Yes, okay, so I've come up with the concept I now need a space. Where am I going? So what I need then, if for Spring Fling, you've got to have a venue. My own little office here, study really, isn't big enough. By the time I've got my desk and my camera equipment and a few books and a chair, there's not enough to fit more than about 2 people in here. So I can't open this up for the Spring Fling event. I need a larger space. So I started kind of asking around and looking around and then contacting people. And there's a great long kind of story behind that I don't need to go into. But basically what I ended up going up to the Crichton. Now the Crichton is this huge 100-acre Victorian estate in Dumfries. And it was a psychiatric hospital, in fact, set up back in the 1800s by, I think, Robert Crichton and his wife or something, somebody Crichton, doctor. Anyway, they set up this psychiatric hospital, and it's 100 acres of beautiful grounds, these fantastic large old Victorian red sandstone buildings. There's a church there, there's an event hall, there's all sorts of things. It's quite an amazing space. Back in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, it closed down and then was taken over by the council, and there is now the Crichton Trust. And the Crichton Trust is basically looking after the grounds and the buildings and is expanding it out. So a lot of the buildings are used for the academic, for the local college and the University of Glasgow, which has its Southwest Scotland outreach bit, I think, down here. But there are also plenty of businesses up there. But there are also, and this is the key bit, there are also plenty of empty rooms, empty buildings or bits of buildings. And I happened at the time to know, he's just actually left, but I happen to know the CEO of the Crichton Trust. Different pathways. And I got in contact with him and I said, look, I'm looking for a space. Have you got any spaces? And he said, yeah, okay, I'll look out for something. And then I went up to see him just before Christmas. And he showed me 4 different spaces. And I will tell you what I will do. I will just show you so this is now what we're on to, is the hunt for a space. And the first place we went to was Crichton Church. And so this is this great big Victorian church, echoing the idea of the kind of Norman style, kind of sort of Gothic cathedral. No, it's not cathedral. I mean, it's a church, but where are we? Do that. There we go. So we got this big church. I could have used this. I mean, this is me standing in the middle of where if you turn around, then you've got this bit. And in terms of a space, I thought, okay, maybe this has got potential here. We had these couple of steps going up where there was a space here. There was more steps there. And I thought, well, yes, I could fit 40 to 50 people in here. However, 2 potential problems. One is, across bank holiday weekend in May, they might want to use the church for a wedding or something. It does get used a lot for weddings. So booking it out might be problematic. But the problem with it, Susan says Crichton Church has the most amazing acoustics. Roland says looks HDR. I will tell you, this is completely unedited, straight out the phone. But then all phone photos are HDR anyway. They take multiple photos and merge them all together. But you can see there's actually a Christmas tree sitting in the middle. This was a week before Christmas when we went and took a look around it. Now, but what I realised very quickly with this, whilst it's a lovely space and there would be space to move people around, the church itself is such a powerful, dominant space that it would end up becoming part of the story. And the story for this is just about the people. What I'm wanting is the interaction of the people. I'm not wanting the church to actually feature. And I think if you place something into a religious establishment, regardless of what your religious faith might be, it's going to become a too dominant part of the narrative. So, decided to skip that one. Next place we went to, this really kind of had potential for me. Now, this is an old milking barn, basically. So, back when it was a psychiatric hospital, they also, part of helping the patients get, part of their recovery and what have you, they had this whole kind of dairy element to it as well. And they had all these cows and they had these milking. And this building was, so you can see all this lovely old Victorian brickwork and everything else. And I really love the space. The problem is, though, I will say, is that big barn doors, no toilet, no running water, no facilities, basically. And if now Spring Fling, although it's the bank holiday weekend at the end of May, there's no guarantee of what the weather is going to be doing. We have had Spring Flings where it's been swelteringly hot, and we've had Spring Flings where it's been freezing cold. I mean, like today, we are in May, but it's maybe 11 or 12 degrees Celsius, but there's a dampness in the air. And if we're out here all day, you're going to get very cold very quickly. And so I was kind of hesitant. I love the space. I thought, and I have in my head that, I'm kind of scribbling it away because I think this is such a beautiful space to potentially do some kind of photo shoot in the future. I just don't have the proper idea for what. Here's another angle. I mean, basically, if you turn to the left here as you're kind of looking off to the picture, where we were standing was over in that corner there, looking down the way. This is another part. It's quite a large building, quite amazing. And the sun's coming here, so we're getting these lovely little shafts of light coming through. So there's definitely photography potential there, but I wasn't sure how I could make it work for crowd. So the next place we went to is there's a building called Crichton Central, which is a cafe, and it's got a little area which they open up for theatre, and they've got a kind of a bit of a hall, an open space that you can, now sometimes it's used for hot desking, but they can empty it out and you can have the space. And that's this one. And I would certainly I was told I could use this one across Spring Fling. Now, an advantage to this is there is a cafe attached to it. And because there's a cafe attached to it, it's a kind of a central hub for a lot of the people who work in the Crichton buildings will go here. And that means there's more people that are likely to discover the event that I'm doing. But after you've seen these other places, it's kind of dull. It's just, yeah, okay, I might be able to fit people in it, but it's a very uninteresting space. And then the last place we went to take a look at was in one of this old Victorian building called Kindar House. And we went upstairs, and as we stepped through the door, we saw that it's a huge room. Now, basically, it was built as a huge room, and then it was sectioned off, and there was partitioned off. And what we can see, but then the partitions have come down. We can see these spaces here cut out of the carpet where the partitions were to create multiple rooms in the space. And then they've been removed since. Now, this is just one angle on the roof, but we stepped into space, very high ceilings. These radiators here are about hip height, I would say, depending on how tall you are. And then it all goes off to the right again. So if you look off, so this corner here, over on the right here, is now this corner here on the left. So you turn to the right and you've got all this space up here. So it's this huge room. And with the sun coming through, it's just, I was like, the light, it's beautiful. I thought, wow, this has got to be a place. This is where I want to do the shoot. So this is where I am going to be doing the shoot, in Kindar House up on the Crichton estate. Now, if you go over here and stand basically about here in the middle of the floor, and then you look back diagonally to the left, this is your shot. So when we came in, those windows were opposite, and I was thinking this corner here is where I want to do the shoot. I want there's windows practically on three sides. You've got windows at the back, you've got windows over here, and in fact, if I go back here, you can see there's even a window here. So the light is quite incredible. There's plenty of space, and I'm starting to think actually maybe shooting into the corner, give me those diagonals, would be an interesting place to do it. And then this is just turning back. That's the door we came in. But it also gives you this sense here of the fact it's also being used as a storage room. The other thing is with this room, because it's still to be done up and everything else, there were, there's holes in the ceiling. The roof has now been fixed, I think, although I did see the odd bucket here just to make sure, in case there's any drips coming down. But the great thing about this room, it's huge, it's empty, they're letting me use it. As and when some business or organisation decides that they're going to rent this room, the whole room will be gutted, it'll be replastered, recarpeted, all that kind of stuff. So they don't mind if I stick blue tack to the wall, if I hammer some nails into the wall, if anything gets spilt on the carpet. So I've just got this massive space, and I just feel so lucky to have got this. What have we got here? Oh, Robert says, great space for photography. I think he's referring back to the barn plate, the milking shed. Susan says, another Peaky Blinders type shoot in the barn. Yeah, well, that could possibly work. Lisa also says that would be a cool shot. Yeah, I mean, it certainly lends itself to that kind of historic element to it. Now, where Peaky Blinders, which is 20th century, or whether you went 18th century costume, 19th century costumes. I mean, could be interesting. Alice says, I remembered the books from the 1980s, Where's Wally? Just had a similar illustrative style to what you're aiming at. Absolutely. And I think that is part of the fun of it, that once I've actually put everybody together, when you get the copy of the photo, you're going to either be able to you're going to be able to kind of look at the photo, and then your first thing you'll be doing is looking for yourself. And it will be a bit like, where's Wally? Okay, where's me? And then once you've found you can be going, oh, where's anybody else? Who else do I know in this photo? So that's where I think a lot of the fun is going to come. April says, looks good. Kim, a lot of possibilities, a lot of room. Stacey says, I had an apartment with radiator heat, very warm, love the windows, lots of light. And Susan says, lovely room with space for Meg's baking. Yes, this is true. There will be Meg's baking as well. For anybody who doesn't know, Susan knows because she's been to see me at Spring Fling before. So my daughter Meg, when I'm doing Spring Fling, she does a whole bunch of gluten-free baking. So flapjacks and maybe gluten-free brownies, things like that, which people can come along, they can sample, and if they want to leave a donation, all the money she raises goes to the local food bank. So it's really tasty and all for a good cause as well. Also makes good company, I do have to say. April says, Susan, you've got to participate. Well, okay, you can chat about that one. So there we go. So we've got, so that's the room, that's the space that I'm going to be using. So where are we at then? So found the space for her. So the next thing then was, this is all very well. The concept, I've come up with a concept, I've come up with a space, all sounds brilliant, except there are now logistics. And there are two major problems that I could be up against. The first is the light. Now the problem with the light is the fact that those windows are that, I'm going to be there all day, and I'm going to be there across 3 days. And if the sun happens to be out, it's going to move around, and there's going to be light on the floor. You saw those little shafts of light on the floor. They're going to move around over the people. So the light falling on the people could be different depending on the time of day they're taken. And I'm not 100% sure whether I can kind of get away with that when I put everybody together, or whether it will be one of these cases where the shadows don't match up and it just kind of feels wrong. There is more leeway than you tend to think there is. You can get away with a certain amount of shadow direction, but you certainly can't have shadows coming this way on one or light and shadows on one way on this person and then this way on another person. There's a limit. However, mostly it's going to be on one side, maybe sometimes on the back, but that started to worry me. The second thing that worries me is this is a flat floor. It's not staged. Okay. So if I'm taking the photo, the people at the front could be blocking the people at the back. And that is a bit of a logistical nightmare because I can't see 50 people in one go. So if I have 3 or 4 dozen people individually photographed in the space, but somebody standing here ends up blocking the person behind them, then I'm not going to be able to see them. And I won't know until I put everything together in the final photo shoot. I might suddenly find that I'm missing 2/3 of the people because the people at the front just blocked everybody else. Now, the crowd photo that I've got for the cover card, that was easy. I had a black background and I just moved everybody, all the little cutouts around so that, but I can't do this. What I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to create the photo in this space. and then people standing in different places in this space. I'm only cutting everybody out on the direct layer where they stay in essentially the same position. I'm not moving people about left or right. So this becomes a very, very real problem. Now, back in the early days when I was talking to people about this idea, somebody suggested the idea that I do this in a cinema or a theatre or something like that, where you've got rows of seats and everybody can sit in their seat. And at that point, you would end up with something more like the cover card photo that I've got here. But to be honest, I felt that was kind of boring. I'd already done that with myself. And it's too easy. It's too easy to do that. I wanted to create a scene. So I'm at that problem, and it's not an uncommon problem for me to go, well, if I knew I could do this and I knew for definite it would work, I probably wouldn't be interested in doing it. The challenge is a part of what drives me. Unfortunately, that means that suddenly I find myself in the deep end. I'm now at Spring Fling. It's in the brochure. I have to be able to perform. I have to be able to create something. And I can't be 100% sure that I'm going to be able to pull it off. So I've got to try and put as much in place as I can to give me the best chance that I can. So what I then did was yesterday, I had a test day. I sent out emails to loads of friends and said, hey, look, I desperately need some bodies to try out things. If I could get a group, I thought if I could get about a dozen people or so I could kind of do blocks of people in the space and see where everybody is potentially blocking anybody else. Most of them didn't reply or just said, sorry, I'm too busy. So then I put it out a general call on Facebook, and even though it was shared multiple times, hardly any response. In the end, though, yesterday I had 8 people, including Meg. So I went into space. Now, what I'll do, I will now talk you through. What have we got here? Roland's noticed it's south facing. Yes, that's right. So we got, the thing is with the weather is we don't know what it's going to do. It might be dull overcast all day. It might be really bright sunshine. It might be a mix. And this is where it gets problematic. So if I go to the root, so because of that problem of the light, the fact that the light could change, what I started to think I would do is maybe see if I can override the light. Now, for those who do remember my Peaky Blinders shoot or some of the others that I've done, the way you can do this to override the natural light is underexpose your camera. So really dial everything down. Go for a 100 ISO, go for an f14 or an f16 or an f18 or something like that. So really narrow aperture, do a higher shutter speed, at least, I would say you could go way above. Generally speaking, if you're you've got to sync it with flashes, you can't tend to go much above 200th of a second. But what you're doing is you are syncing it with flashes. So when you go click, the flashes go off, the strobes, maybe a plug-in strobes or something like that. And then they will light up everything and it overrides the natural light. So that was my plan. That was my initial plan. So what we end up with then is, let's do that. So this is that space. This is this corner when I've dialed everything down. So as you can see, there's barely any light coming through the window. The whole thing looks completely dark, right? So at this point, like I say, I want something like 200th of a second, 100 ISO, f14. It's that kind of thing. And then what I did was I got 2 strobes plugged in and boom, they go off. Same setting, lights are going off. This is now the corner I've got. So even though the day is just, if you're standing there, it's normal daylight. Now what's happening is I've kind of got a little bit of control over the lighting system. So then I said, oh, well, okay, let's turn it into the corner. I still prefer this idea of sort of shooting into the corner. What's Stacey saying? Sometimes it's tough getting people together. If I wasn't across the pond, I would certainly show up. Well, this is part of the other thing, is I know full well there are plenty of people, like many of the people who come to the podcast, who, if they could If they weren't, there wasn't this little thing called the Atlantic in the way, or if you weren't on another continent, you could probably have made it. Susan is local, but of course she had other things as well. And this is the problem, is I can't expect everybody just to drop everything to come for me. I might go, hey, I've got this. But what was I talking about? I was talking about a Saturday on a bank holiday weekend, and I was giving people 1 week's notice. What could I expect? So the fact that I actually ended up with 8 people was probably far more than I deserved to get. So we're in this space, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I've lit the space. It's kind of a bit uninteresting. Here's a couple of people. We've got Jay and Ellie, and they're just sort of, I need somebody's in there. How's the light bouncing around? Not overly happy with it. What if I was to go straight on? And so you can see one of the lights here off to the left. And I thought, well, okay, maybe shoot straight. And I just took one shot. I don't want to do it straight on. I don't want to do it 90 degrees to the wall. This is going to be more interesting if I've got the diagonals coming in. I want to shoot into the corner. Now, one of the other things that I had already understood is one of the ways to get around this problem of the people in front potentially blocking the people at the back is if I can get a bit of height. So I've got my tripod on full extension, which is nearly 2 meters high. And then I'm not 2 meters high. So I've got little kitchen steps, step up on that, and I can just about see into the camera. So what I've now done is I've elevated the camera. So I'm now looking down a bit. What's also in the room, because the room's just being used as storage, is there's a few chairs and tables. So now I realise that maybe if we have some chairs, we have a table in, what I'll do is, although I haven't got it set quite here yet, put a table in the middle. A table in the middle acts as a kind of focal point, a kind of drawing point. We can have some chairs around, and then that way we can start building up the layers. VG says, once before you took black and white and filled the whole wall. All the people who visit may volunteer. Yes, I've done. Yes, I'm hoping that there will be plenty of people who actually on the event. I think there will be plenty of people who turn up who will want to take part in this. My problem for this particular shot was the fact that this is a test shot. This is just, there's no final image or anything. Well, not as such, not that's going out there. So what I'm now doing is I'm trying to work out the parameters. So here we've got Jay over on the left here. And I'm thinking we've got these 2 chairs here. And essentially what we've got, if I take those as my border, can I fit enough people into this space? So I'm still playing around with the lighting. I'm trying. The problem is that now what I had done with when I'm here, I've taken one of the strobes, the strobe that's on the right. I've done a couple of different versions. One where I've put it through an umbrella, another where I've just turned it to bounce off the wall. And then if I put it this way, you see, we end up with these really hard shadows. You can see the hard shadow coming from Jay over here and the chair. And if you end up with that, in a way, the shadows are going to look even worse, because where everybody would be standing, you would naturally have shadows falling on people. But if they're photographed individually, you're not going to get that. One way and another, I just didn't like the look. And I found myself getting more and more frustrated with trying to get the light up. The people I've invited along, I've only got them for a couple of hours. I mean, the fact that, that's the other thing, is you ask people to turn up to help you, but 90% of it is just standing around while I'm fiddling around with lights and then mad panic. Oh, can you go and stand here, please? So not a lot of fun for anybody who's turned up either. So I can feel just all the energy draining out of me as I can't seem to get an interesting light. Because the problem is what I really tend to love is a bit of backlight. Anybody who knows me, anybody who's been listening to these podcasts, how often do I bang on about backlight? Backlight, photographer's secret weapon. Backlight amplifies the aesthetics of a photo. But I can't stick a light into this photo, because if I stick a light behind them, it's going to show up. And then, just as we've talked in very recent feedback sessions, if you've got a big light spot in the photo, your eye gets drawn to it. So I can't have that. And we're up on the first floor in the UK. In America, you would call it the second floor. Ground floor, 1 floor up. So it's not like it's way too high for me to be able to stick a light outside the window on a tripod. And the more I played around with the light, the more frustrating I was getting with the fact that I thought it's just, although I'm worried about the fact that the sunlight might come in or the light might change, it's not doing it for me. So I thought, well, what if I mix it up? What if I try and do a mix of natural light and then a strobe, just to light people up? And so I did this, and you can now see this was a dull day yesterday. We didn't have the sunlight coming through. And we've got the light coming in the window, but now we've got a light coming to the front, and I still don't like it. It's just not doing it for me. And yet, if I go natural light, this is just so much nicer. What's Stacey saying? 6 foot I would shake, not clear shot would happen. No good with heights. I'm okay with 4 foot. Yeah, well, I mean, yes. It's just a case of having the tripod up, and then I'm just going up on the kitchen steps. So I can just about cope with that. But when I look at this bit where we've got the natural light, and I'm thinking again and again, well, we've got these big windows. And that's actually what I got excited about in the first place. When I first stepped into the space, my first utterance was, the light. I have seen the light. The light is beautiful. These huge Victorian windows. So at this point, I think, well, okay, what I'm going to do then is I've decided now that I am just going to go with natural light. And I'm going to essentially wing it. Isn't everything slightly winging it? In the sense that I'm going to have to deal with and if I have parts of the day where the light's coming in from one angle rather than another, or it's a dull day or it's a light day, I'm just going to have to Photoshop it more. I'm just going to have to pull down highlights, bring up shadows, do color balancing. Now, already with this, there's going to be a lot of Photoshop work just slotting everybody together. The idea that I might have to go in and individually shift the shading and the light kind of things on people is something of a nightmare scenario, I will admit. I don't really want to be still editing this at Spring Fling next year. But ultimately, what we're trying to weigh up is aesthetics with convenience. And there are plenty of people out there who will go for convenience every time. I won't. In an essence, depending on your level of creativity, depending on your level of obsession as being an artist, then the obsessional artists don't like to compromise. You only compromise when you really have no choice. And if there's a choice between aesthetics and convenience, you will choose aesthetics every time. So although it's going to be massively more inconvenient for me because I am going to be really ramping up the number of hours I'm going to be in Photoshop afterwards, for me, I think it's better. Because when we look at this, I mean, the light, whatever angle you're at, there's backlight. You know, there's even Ken, who's not standing there, there's light coming from the windows on the left. So I figured then that this is what I would have to do. What's Susan saying? Don't stress, there'll be no sunshine. You can't guarantee it. I have also known people get sunburnt at Spring Fling weekend too. So this is just a couple of people in the space. So what I then did was I thought, well, okay, let's just get everybody into the space and let's just do a quick shot here. You can see our lovely Meg just sitting on the floor in the front. Let's just loosely fill the space with the 8 people I've got. What does that look like? And this was the first point yesterday where I thought, ooh, this could work. Now, this I think tends to look a little bit like a band shot. Indie band, everybody's sort of sitting at different lengths and different spaces. But you start to get a sense, okay, here's a space. Now, the thing is, that's 8 people. What I've got to do is I've got to somehow fit in what I'm ideally wanting is somewhere between 40 and 50. I don't think I'm ever going to get more than 50 in. If I drop below 30, it might still be an interesting photo, but somehow I'm going to feel like I've failed. What's Alan saying? What about muslin or net curtain fabric at the windows to diffuse the light? Now that's a really good point, and it's almost immediately what Jay here suggested, or he was also suggesting the idea of tissue paper or something like that. And yes, in terms of the light that falls into them. But again, I think we come down to aesthetics. I love these windows. And I think if we just had cloth over them, I feel it would diminish the aesthetics of it. Now, I know at the same time you can say, well, what are also the aesthetics? We've got plastic chairs and a grubby floor and bits of peeling paint on the walls. But at the same time, I think there's something glorious about those windows. And so to solve if it's just about the light, I think you're absolutely on the ball there, Alan. It's a good point. But this is more than just the diffuse light. I think, so yes, it is something I did consider, but yes, I'm glad somebody else was thinking of that. So I thought, well, okay, what are we going to do now? So then what we did was we've laid out chairs, and what we can see here is that I've got, what layers can I get? So we can have somebody, Meg's here sitting at the front. We've got a row of chairs. We've got a table, some more chairs. So that means if we can have a row of people sitting at the front and a row of people sitting down, they are automatically at different heights. Then we can have a row of people standing behind them. We've got different heights again. If we stagger these people, like here, we can have people behind them in the gap. And then if I have a little bunch of chairs at the back there, for those who feel perfectly comfortable and I don't feel are going to be an insurance risk, we could have a few people standing on chairs at the back. So how are we going to try this out? So what I did was I got everybody to sort of stand there and find places, move about until I felt like there's enough leeway, because I can't have everybody as close together as I am in that cover photo shot with all of me. The fact is, if I'm photographing everybody individually, people are going to move slightly from side to side. And if there's not enough leeway, I'm going to run too much risk of people overlapping each other. So I have to have enough of a gap that you feel that each person is going to be seen, even if they move 6 inches to the left or to the right, that there's still going to be space for them. So now what I've got to do is work out the spaces and then mark the spaces. And now what we come to is, an observant person may have seen, there's a pack of cards on the table. And this was a friend's suggestion. I won't claim it as my own. They said, well, look, you're trying to get 50 people, get a pack of cards. And then you can tape the cards to the floor using a bit of carpet tape. And then when people turn up, you can allot them a position. So you can be the 2 of diamonds, you could be the Jack of hearts, you can be the Queen of clubs. And depending on whether they're a tall person or they need a seat, or they're quite happy to sit on the floor in the front, they can be given a different card. And then that way, I don't have to worry about anybody ending up in the same space twice. So I got the 8 of them to sort of do this. Then what we did was we kept a couple of the people here, and then we overlapped and they moved around. And what you can see now is, now we're happy with that. We've shoved a card here. We've got an 8 of spades here. We've got a 2 of spades on there. And where people were standing behind, we stuck cards onto the floor. Then we move people around again. So we're keeping, say, Meg here, Jay there at the back, well, and Meg here, you see. So, and then we can move people across again. And now, as you can see, what I've realised then, I don't have to worry about having anybody else sat in the chairs, because we know the chairs will work. So I've put cards on the chairs. We also know people sitting on the floor will be fine. So we put cards on the floor as well. So these are all specific spaces that I know are going to work. Now I've got these people lined up at the back, a couple of people standing on the chairs, where I know if we put people here, we've got enough gap to go between. So now, once everybody's there, tape on the back of a card, stick it on the floor, and then move around again. Everybody, we're happy with that. We now know this is going to work at the back, so we can stick some more cards on the back chair, move everybody around again, and now we're finding the final kind of space and move everybody around again. And once we'd finished all this, and I'd stuck all these cards, you can see bits on the floor over here, I realised I'd actually got 46 cards. So between 40 and 50, and it means that if we're a couple short, we're still going to be over 40. If we manage to squeeze anybody else in, I mean, that's a good number. And so just as a final thing, just to show you, I did a quick knocked it all together last night. And this sort of shows you the kind of idea of what we're looking at here. So this is, I mean, it's not 46 people because we've got chairs empty and some people did sitting down here, but we roughly about sort of 35-ish people, versions out of the 8, all dotted around. And this gives you a sense of the space and what it's like to fit that many people in. And then, like I say, you imagine a couple more people in the chair and a few more people sitting down at the front. So ultimately, this is going to be the space. However, the thing about this particular photo, is apart from the fact that it's the same people repeated about 6 times, is that they're all looking at the camera. They're also, nobody's bothering with any expressions. Most of them have got a kind of, they're not even, not sure whether I've taken the photo or not. So it's just resting faces. Nobody's smiling. Nobody's trying to sort of do any particular interaction. But what I want you to do now is imagine the idea that you've got each of these people is then interacting. They've turned their head. They're talking to the person who's in the chair, or they're leaning over, listening to what somebody's saying in the chair, or they're standing at the back, waving to somebody, right? This then is the idea of what I'm going to be trying to do with crowd. And now finally, I'm kind of feeling there's a good chance it might work. There are still some problems. There are still 1 or 2 places sort of in between at the back where I'm not entirely sure whether there's a slight risk that somebody might overlay. It does mean that those who are just behind the chairs, I think, might need to lean forward on the chair, place hands there and lean forward, so that then leaving a little bit of space. I will have to make sure that taller people who are, particularly people who are comfortably over 6 foot, will probably have to go into that kind of row just before you get to the chairs. Things like that. So there's still a lot of logistics to kind of work out with this. But I think finally, after several nights of not sleeping very well on this, I'm starting to feel that I might just be able to pull this one off. Now, but the main thing is like I say, you take that crowd of people and you get them interacting. You get them turning, pulling faces, jabbing fingers, waving, all that kind of thing. And that's going to give you a real kind of sense of interaction. Now, it might still have a slight look like a kind of a big staff photo, but it's also good. But even if it does, it's going to look like before the photo was taken or after the photo was taken. It's not going to look like the school photo where everybody is looking at the camera, because basically with this, hardly anybody is going to look at the camera. I'm going to be encouraging people to look as though they're interacting with somebody else. And I think that's really where the power of this photo is going to work. So that's where I'm at. So that's crowd. So crowd, Studio 83 on the Orange Route, 23rd to the 25th of May, up at the Crichton Estate in Dumfries. There will be some Ayres. Now, there's also a couple of other studios up at the Crichton Estate. In the same building just downstairs is Kevin Reed, who's an amazing illustrator. And then in another building, just a couple of buildings around the corner, is Clayworks, amazing potters, 2 potters there, and they'll be doing demonstrations as well. So even in our little cluster across the whole bit of Dumfries and Galloway, there's other things to come and see as well. Once this has all been completed, the however many months it takes me to edit all the photos together, I'll probably do something on the podcast and show you the final images as well. But that's really what we're talking about. So that hopefully then that gives you an idea. And like I said, if anybody's watching this who feels that you can come along and drag a friend and you would like to, then please do. Okay, right. Where are we at? Okay, what I will do now is tell you what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So a quick reminder, buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can support this podcast. And I think if you want to support, but not just support, actually, if you are interested at all, actually, is the Substack. I have, like I said, I've set up Substack now, kimairesphotography.substack.com, as a place where I'm going to start trying to get out regular newsletters. And those newsletters I will at least once a month be putting out something about the podcast. So the podcasts we've had, the podcasts that are coming up. So if you missed anything, there'll be links to it. Or for that matter, if you've got friends who you go, oh, you know what, even if they're not interested in following all the podcasts, but there's something you would like to show a friend, it'll make it easier for you to find something and forward to them as well. And then periodically I might be writing interesting articles or writing about events like Spring Fling that are coming up that I'm going to be involved in, or if I'm going to be running any workshops, whether online or in the flesh. So if you think you might be at all interested, then Substack will be the place to find me and to sign up for. And again, tell your friends. If you know anybody else who's interested, even though they're not interested in the podcast themselves, but they are interested in photography, you can let them know. Sign up for it yourself and then forward them a copy, point them to it as well. Now, coming up this month then, although it is a 5 Sunday month, we have only got 3 podcasts and this is one of them. Next weekend, there won't be a podcast. So Maggie and I have got other arrangements, so there won't be a podcast next week. So the next podcast will be on the 14th of May. Now, what we're then talking about is the topic of the month. VG, as I said earlier, won the most accumulated smug points. And so we then go, so what are we going to talk about? Now, there's a word here, and I'm still trying to work out how to pronounce it, but it's pareidolia. 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 You're going to find it. Now, pareidolia is basically when you see shapes or faces in something that isn't there, in some kind of random pattern. So unless there are a small percentage of people who are aphantasia, I can't remember, who don't have any kind of visualization ability in their head, and quite often have problems recognizing faces as well. But that's a small percentage. Most of us are hardwired to recognize faces, to even create faces. The man in the moon, a few large crater patches, we think we see a face. Wood chip wallpaper, little specks. Clouds, how often do you see a dog catching a ball in the clouds, or a skiing dinosaur or something? And all it takes, literally 2 dots and a line, and you've got a face. We are hardwired for the idea of seeing faces in things. So, and that, I've known the concept all my life. You know, as a child, you're lying in a field and your mum's saying, oh, look, what can you make out of those clouds? It's also a major form of creativity. You know, it's to find something, find an old stone wall or a bit of tree bark or something and say, can I find some shapes in here? And when you start looking, your brain can't help but pattern recognition. It's one of the kind of key aspects of the human brain is pattern recognition. And so we're tapping into that. It's where pattern recognition essentially goes wild. We start seeing patterns in things that aren't actually there. You know, from a face in a water fountain that's coming out of a wall, through to people who swear they've seen Jesus on a piece of cheese on toast, right? There's all sorts of ideas. So this is the topic that VG was talking about. So that's what I'm going to say. So now I have to admit, I don't have many photos that fall into that category. So over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be probably out with my phone, looking for opportunities, looking for ideas, working out what works, what doesn't, where you can kind of look for these things, how to narrow the odds in your favor. And then so in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be talking about pareidolia and how you can go about it. And then I will be setting the challenge. And you will have 2 weeks for the challenge, because the week in between is Spring Fling weekend. Crowd, everything we've just been talking about. So there won't be a podcast over Spring Fling weekend, because obviously I'm going to be way too busy for that. So there will be 2 weeks then. I will talk about pareidolia, and then 2 weeks after that will be the pareidolia challenge. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Anybody who knows how to pronounce the word properly is probably laughing themselves silly. But that will be the challenge. And so on the 31st of May, we will then have it. So you send your images to me by the 29th of May, if you possibly can. And then we will do the pareidolia challenge. And then again, whoever's accumulated the most smug points across the course of the month gets to choose the challenge, the topic of the month and the challenge for June. So hope that all makes sense. Right. What have we got here? Roland saying faces in the clouds. Yes, it's a common version of it. April says great topic, VG. Stacey saying great podcast today. Thank you. Alan says the Rorschach ink blot test. Yeah, very, very similar. The Rorschach ink blot works on the same principle, that the brain will interpret shapes. And in fact, is that same thing that the Rorschach ink blot, you know, one person might interpret as a butterfly, another person might interpret as a bat, another person might interpret as a demon from Hades, another person might interpret it as a pretty flower. So sometimes what we see, because what we are seeing isn't actually there. It is a projection of the mind overusing the pattern recognition. So we're seeing we're assuming that we're starting to see something, even though it doesn't actually exist. That also means that we can be putting in part of our emotional interpretation as well. So if we are fearful, if we are frightened, if we are happy, what we see can become a reflection of our own state of mind. And in the case of the Rorschach ink blot and what have you, sometimes if a psychiatrist is trying to get an understanding of what somebody's state of mind is by showing them essentially what is a random blot, the way they interpret that blot gives you an insight into the way they are seeing the world. So yes, absolutely working on the same idea. What Stacey says, faces on tiles. Yep, that's another one. Tiles, wallpaper, wood chip, lichen, stone walls, tree bark, all sorts of places you can see it. Fronts of cars as well. In fact, certain ones like the sprite, the little frog eyes at the front, very much looks like it, and the grille was done to look like a smiley face, kind of deliberately designed to be a fun car with the look of a face on it. So that's us. So pareidolia, or something very similar to that, is what we will be talking about in 2 weeks' time. Then the challenge will be set for 2 weeks after that. Right, I think that's basically it. Thank you ever so much for everybody who's taken the time to turn up, leave a comment, say hello, and all the rest of it. And if you can remember if you haven't done so already, do click the like. It does help the algorithms and all the various bits and pieces. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.